This case happened during World War I. Congress had just passed the draft to get more men into the military for the war. Charles Schenck, the General Secretary of the Socialist Party in the United States, was an outspoken critic against the participation of the United States in World War I. To express the opposition to the war, Schenck and his Socialist Party associates printed and mailed 1,500 leaflets to men eligible for the draft. The leaflets denounced the draft as involuntary servitude and violated the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. The pamphlet also argued that participation in the war did not serve the best interests of the American people. The constitutional issue is if this went against the First Amendment right, freedom of speech. Throughout history, Congress has enacted laws limiting freedom of speech under certain conditions. These laws were created in order to protect national security against spies, saboteurs, and obstructors of the national war effort. For example, the draft. 2 months after the United States entered the war, Congress passed the Espionage Act of 1917, which enabled the federal government to punish certain kinds of dissent against wartime policies. In May 1918, Congress passed the Sedition Act, which strengthened the Espionage Act. This act outlawed any speech or writing that in any way might go against and undermine the U.S. government, flag, military forces, or Constitution, or intend to promote resistance against federal government policies. Many Americans believe that these two acts violated the First Amendment that guarantees freedom of speech and press. Schenck was arrested in August 1917 because he violated the Espionage Act with his pamphlet. At his trial, Schenck claimed that his First Amendment right was violated for freedom of speech. For the first time, the U.S. Supreme Court directly faced question of whether the federal government might limit speech under special circumstances. If Schenck had said his opinions that were on the leaflets in a time of peace, it would have been protected by the First Amendment. But urging men to resist the draft during a time of war presents a clear and present danger to the nation. This was argued by Justice Oliver Holmes, and it was also why his pamphlet was not protected under the First Amendment right of freedom of speech.
At its core, Schenck v. U.S. is a case about the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and if the Espionage Act violated it. The courts ruled unanimously in favor of the United States that the Espionage Act did not violate the First Amendment. They said Schenck's conspiracy charge was justified in that it was an acceptable use of Congress's wartime authority. Their justification on the ruling was that the court said they owed greater respect to the government in wartime, where the court claims there are constitutional rights at stake. Chief Justice Holmes concluded that the First Amendment does not protect acts that may cause significant danger that Congress has the power to prevent. He then stated that the widespread spreading of the leaflets was going to disrupt the conscription process. He made the comparison to the situation of shouting "fire" in a theater, which is not permitted by the First Amendment. Because this case was unanimous, there were no dissents from the court. So the first of the two similar court cases is Brandenburg v. Ohio, and Brandenburg was a Ku Klux Klan leader who gave a speech in Ohio and was charged and arrested under a Ohio criminal syndicalism law. The case was on whether this law that prohibits public speeches that promote illegal activities violates the First Amendment. The court ruled in favor of Ohio unanimously. And then the second case is Debs v. U.S., and it is another World War I case in which Eugene Debs delivered a speech in which he urged his audience to interfere with the recruitment. The Supreme Court said that Schenck v. U.S. directly affected this case via stare decisis. The court ruled in favor of the United States.